Hello, everyone. Welcome to New Gen Politics. So, today I wanted to talk a little bit about a story that kind of embodies what's going on with the hurricane relief, the problems people are having with FEMA, and kind of how this institution has lost trust from the people, even the people who are relying on their aid. So, in Bat Cave, North Carolina, this is one of the towns that was hit the hardest. And you can see from the photos that the buildings are destroyed, the environment was torn up, the river was widened, um, infrastructure, roads, bridges, all stuff destroyed. Right, absolute carnage. And of course, this is one of the places FEMA would want to go and help. So first, the New York Post shows up. They take some photos, they interview people, they ask about what's going on, and FEMA then contacts the residents and say, well, we want to come help. We see how bad it is. And so they talk to the residents over the phone, and the residents say, sure, you can come in. The roads are okay to drive on. You just have to drive around some obstacles. The people of the town use their chainsaws and their diggers to kind of remove all the tree branches, all the major obstacles. You just have to hazard the rest that's on the road, but it's fine to drive on. Well, FEMA shows up, as they said they would, sees the road closed sign, which they were told they can drive around, and said, well, this is the biggest obstacle FEMA's ever encountered, and just turned back and left. And just abandoned these people, didn't want to give them any help, didn't want to drive past the road closed sign, and said, good luck. So the residents have been having to do everything. And fixing up their houses, they've been getting supplies from citizens. They've said that local firefighters and the Department of Transportation have been helpful and gotten them some resources. But overall, it's all a citizen effort. Now, FEMA says they want to come back, and the residents say they don't want. They're afraid that what's going to happen is FEMA's going to show up, and instead of bringing, food and supplies, wood, steel, whatever they need, they're afraid FEMA's going to show up and say, well, this place is uninhabitable. You're going to have to leave, and order them out of their town for who knows how long until they can reconstruct. And as we know, the government is very slow to do anything efficient. So they're worried that they're going to do more harm than good. And so they say, we don't want you here, or you're not welcome. The disaster relief, organization has ignored the people, refused to go where journalists will go to help during a disaster, and then now they want to show up again, probably because they're getting such negative press. But ultimately, the people are afraid of the government. They're worried that they're going to do more harm than good, so they say they don't want them. This is not the only town that this is happening in, and with another hurricane on the rise, headed towards Florida, people are totally lost faith in FEMA as an organization. There's stories of FEMA not only not helping, but actively stopping civilians from going in for search and rescue, to deliver supplies, threatening to arrest them. The validity of all these claims is up in the air. We won't quite a while, but the general trust of the institution is gone. Right? And people do not like how they have shifted millions of dollars to help illegal immigrants. They're saying, oh, well, that's a different pot, right? The FEMA budget, that pot was for the illegal immigrants, and the pot for the disaster relief, we know it's not enough, but you're going to take from this pot. Well, it's all FEMA money. It's all disaster relief money that's supposed to go to American citizens, and there's supposed to be a bank of it for when a disaster happens, so you don't run out of money. But no, FEMA doesn't. They don't have the money. They don't have the skill. They don't have bureaucratic. It's bureaucratic with the rules and regulations, but not with the leadership. There's no leadership that's like giving out orders, and nobody knows what to do. So it's just like constricting, and it's doing more harm than good to the organization itself, and also to the people they're trying to help. So this has been a total disaster. And we might see more of this. People just say, I don't want the government's help because I think they're going to do more harm than good. That's a problem when people say that, like, we're here to provide aid for disaster relief. And they say, we'd rather do it ourselves because we think you're going to screw it up in some horrible fashion. So I don't know what FEMA's going to do, especially with another hurricane on the rise. They already don't have any money, apparently. So what's going to happen if it's like a category 3 right now, it could turn into a category 4 or 5, and that could be disastrous for Florida. I have faith in Ron DeSantis to act properly, the Florida National Guard to act properly. But when it comes to federal government institutions, they just seem to fail on every level, even at the things they're supposed to be good at. And that's why people don't trust them anymore. They don't trust the government institutions. And it's beyond trust. It's or beyond a lack of trust. It's into the point of fear that they will come in and make things worse. That's what all the residents said, is they think that they're going to make things worse. They're not welcome. And so what happens if FEMA says, well, we're coming anyways, and we're going to remove you by force? Well, that would be a very bad press op, to have a standoff between the citizens of a town who've just had their lives completely upended. They have to rebuild from scratch. And to add insult to injury, FEMA's going to show up and arrest anybody who doesn't want to leave, force them out of their homes, whatever. That's the fear of these people, and that situation that could happen, and it'd be very ugly and not very appealing for the current administration, whose vice president is now running for the election. That's a really bad look, to have just totally lost the plot, totally lost the control on, like, what are you supposed to do in this situation? What are you prioritizing? Are you prioritizing your rules or your photo ops or whatever? Or are you prioritizing people's lives and their livelihoods and what's going to happen to them after a disaster like this? But it's clear that they're not prioritizing that. They're not prioritizing putting Americans first. People are still complaining about the fact that we give billions of dollars to countries all over the world, to illegal immigrants, and Americans are last. Even in our worst times like this, Americans are last. And it's really making people kind of realize that the government is not for the people, by the people anymore. It's two separate groups of people, and you exist to serve the government. The government does not exist to serve you, like originally intended. You exist to serve the government as a laborer class, a lower class. You pay your taxes and your tithings, and in return, it's not that you get something in return, it's that something bad doesn't happen to you in return. That's, it's basically like you're paying for protection money to the government. They won't come and arrest you. They won't, ruin your lives or throw litigation at you or whatever. They won't abandon you. There's a level of like protection money that you are owed, and it feels more like an obligation out of fear versus like a benefit, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm excited to pay my tax dollars. No one's ever really, but I'm glad that my taxes are going to effective things. We get good roads, we get good bridges. When something happens, the search and rescue is amazing and everything gets rebuilt in a couple months. It's like, no, it takes years and years for anything to get done. Usually the problems get worse. People get abandoned or thrown around. And yeah, like people should be following codes, building and whatnot. They should be having safety equipment and whatnot when working on their own homes. But what they don't want is FEMA to come in and say, well, you're not following any of our guidelines, so we're going to remove you from your homes and this whole area. And people don't like that. They don't want that. That's kind of a conflict that will arise in the future, is more of this like independence. Like, yes, I understand the value of the rules, but when you don't help us and only enforce the rules with no benefit to us, why even follow the rules? Why even want to play the game? Why even want to participate with you when I feel like I'm just being a partner that's being abused? I'm not an equal player in this relationship of government and the governed. So we'll see what happens with another storm on the rise, with continued efforts. And I'm interested to see how this is going to affect the election, because this is a big thing. It's kind of a big representation of government as a whole, the effectiveness of the current bureaucratic system, the leadership in charge. Biden has said Kamala has, been in every meeting, and he always defers to her, like her opinion. He listens to her. She signs off on everything. So Biden's tied that noose around her neck, and it's either make or break. If FEMA can pull it together and do a good job and help these people, then it's a good thing. It's a good thing for the leadership. It's a good thing for the people. I'm not saying the only thing that matters is the election, but it would also be good for the current administration as like a symbol that their leadership style works. If it doesn't, then it will show that their leadership style doesn't work, and therefore they want to go with somebody else, the other option, right? And that being Donald. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure, but I'm excited to kind of keep reporting on this sort of thing and see this growing trend in anti-government rhetoric, because we need to fix government. It's a disaster. It's a glut. It's got too many problems. It's got too many people. And we need to condense it and decentralize it so it can be more reactionary to local problems and help local. Now that you've heard what I think, please let me know what you think down in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.